Breaking news just detonated inside royal circles. A respected royal historian claims Prince Philip left a private letter warning Charles about Harry's future, and it was hidden for years. Not a rumour, not a tabloid leak, a letter. A warning. And if the historian is right, Philip didn't just predict tension, he predicted a crisis. Because the words weren't affectionate, they were strategic, sharp, and deeply unsettling. The question now isn't whether the letter exists, it's who kept it buried. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The historian doesn't present this like gossip. That's what makes it land like a grenade. He claims he has verified authenticity through restricted channels, through sources who don't speak lightly, through details that match Philip's private style so closely it would be almost impossible to fake. And the way the historian describes the discovery doesn't feel accidental. It feels like something unearthed from the kind of archive that isn't used for history books, it's used for containment. A restricted archive tied to Philip's private papers, the kind of place where words are stored not for nostalgia, but for control. Because if this letter truly existed, it wouldn't sit in a normal file. It would be placed where only a handful of trusted hands could reach it. That alone changes the stakes. This isn't simply about a family warning. It's about why the warning was treated like it could destabilize the monarchy if it ever surfaced. The historian's claim suggests someone made a deliberate decision. Keep Philip's words quiet. Keep them out of public memory. Keep them away from the very narrative that has surrounded Harry for years. And once that realization hits, the story stops being about what Philip wrote. It becomes about who decided the public should never know. The historian describes Philip's tone as protective, blunt, and uncharacteristically urgent. And that detail is chilling, because Philip wasn't a man known for soft language. If his words were urgent, then the urgency wasn't emotional. It was strategic. It implies Philip saw something in Harry's future path, something he believed could ripple outward beyond personal conflict and become institutional damage. The warning, according to the historian, doesn't focus on a single argument or a single phase. It focuses on trajectory. The kind of long-term risk assessment you write when you believe the problem isn't temporary, it's building. And then the historian drops the detail that makes palace insiders allegedly scramble. Not publicly, of course. Palaces don't scramble in front of cameras. They scramble behind doors, in sudden meetings, in careful phone calls, in a tightening of access and language. Because if Philip warned Charles about Harry's future path, it threatens multiple narratives at once. It threatens the story the palace has told the public. It threatens the story Harry has told the world. And it threatens the thin layer of private family dispute that has protected the institution from admitting something much darker. That there may have been internal foresight about where this was heading. The foreshadowing in the historian's claim is what makes it feel almost cinematic. He hints Philip referenced a specific trigger moment. Not just be careful, not just watch him, a trigger. A moment Philip believed would flip everything. The kind of moment that turns family tension into public crisis. That detail suggests Philip wasn't writing in vague anxiety, he was writing with a scenario in mind. A future he could see forming. One that scared him enough to put it in ink, meant for Charles alone. And then comes the cliffhanger line the historian refuses to fully quote, but insists he can describe. One sentence in the letter reads like a command to Charles, not advice, not guidance, a command. The implication is brutal, because it suggests Philip believed Charles' instincts, fatherhood, compassion, denial could become a liability if left unchecked. A command means Philip didn't trust emotional hesitation. A command means he believed the institution might require hard boundaries, even if those boundaries ripped the family apart. That is what makes the story so explosive. Not the drama of an old letter, but the possibility that the monarchy was warned from the inside and still walked into the storm. Because if Philip truly predicted a crisis, the question becomes unavoidable. Was this whole situation ever just bad luck? Or was it something the palace tried to manage quietly until it became too big to contain? And the historian, by choosing to speak now, throws gasoline on that question. He forces the palace to confront a document it may have relied on remaining buried. He forces Charles to face a warning that might paint him as either negligent or complicit. And he forces the public to consider something far more unsettling than ordinary royal drama. That the most dangerous family conflicts aren't the ones that happen suddenly, they're the ones that were anticipated, hidden, and still allowed to unfold. But before we get to what Philip warned about, one question has to be answered: why would a royal historian speak now, after so many years of silence? Royal historians don't casually drop bombs. They protect sources, reputations, and access for a living. So when one of them steps forward with a claim this explosive, it means something changed, something big enough to outweigh the palace's unspoken rule. Don't destabilize the crown. Insiders whisper the historian wasn't planning to reveal anything, until a new development made the silence feel dangerous. Because in royal circles, silence is currency. It buys invitations. It buys trust. It buys proximity to the very people historians build careers around. A serious historian doesn't gamble that access on a whim. So the moment this story breaks, the first question isn't, is it true? The first question is, what forced his hand? And that's where the atmosphere turns paranoid. Because the answer is never just one thing. It's pressure building from multiple directions at once. The historian suggests recent palace shifts made the letter relevant again. And that detail is like a match near gasoline. Palace shifts can mean many things: new alignments, new priorities, quiet changes in who speaks for whom. It implies the internal story about Harry has entered a new phase, one where the old narrative no longer holds. If the historian sensed the palace was about to reshape Harry's role, or reshape the public's understanding of it, then revealing Philip's warning becomes a preemptive strike. Not against Harry, against distortion. Rumours of internal disagreements about Harry's role begin to resurface, and those rumours don't need official confirmation to be dangerous. In a palace, disagreement is often expressed through absence, through delayed invitations, through sudden briefings, through conflicting sources close to the situation. The historian's decision to speak now suggests he's seen something behind the curtain, something that made him believe the monarchy was about to rewrite the past, in a way that would either bury Philip's warning permanently or twist it into something unrecognizable. And then there's the most unsettling possibility: someone else was about to leak it first. That's how these moments often work. Information doesn't emerge because someone becomes brave. It emerges because someone realizes control is slipping. If the historian sensed the letter was already moving through the wrong hands, being used, packaged, weaponized, then stepping forward becomes damage limitation. He can claim he's revealing it to prevent a bigger distortion, to stop the public from being fed a manipulated version, to make sure the truth comes out in a form that can't be completely controlled by palace strategy or media chaos. That framing, preventing distortion, sounds noble, but it's also tactical. Because once a story is leaked badly, it becomes impossible to correct. The first version becomes the truth, even if it's inaccurate, and everyone else spends months shouting into the wind. A careful historian understands that. So if he's speaking now, it's because he believes the alternative is worse. A chaotic leak with missing context, convenient edits, and strategic omissions that would turn Philip's warning into propaganda for someone else's agenda. Then the foreshadowing creeps in, and it's chilling. Mentions of two versions of the letter's contents circulating. Two versions means someone has already started shaping the story. Two versions means there may be competing interests inside the palace, one side wanting Philip's letter framed as an old man's harsh caution, another side wanting it framed as a definitive command that justifies hard boundaries. Two versions also means the historian is trying to get ahead of a coming narrative war. Because if two versions exist, then the public isn't about to receive a simple revelation. They're about to receive a battle over interpretation. And the emotional stakes are enormous. Exposing Philip's warning risks damaging Charles's authority in the most painful way by implying he was warned and still failed to prevent the fallout. It puts Charles in a bind. Either he ignored a direct warning from his father, or he acted on it quietly and allowed the family fracture to deepen behind closed doors. Either version makes Charles look weaker than the palace can afford, which is why the historian speaking now is so destabilizing. It forces questions Charles cannot answer cleanly without exposing the inner machinery of the monarchy. Then comes the cliffhanger detail that turns the story from family drama into something far more dangerous. The historian hints the letter includes names beyond Charles and Harry. Not just general outside influences, but actual people circles, advisors, maybe even figures connected to media or strategy. If that's true, it means Philip wasn't just worried about Harry's emotions, he was worried about who might shape those emotions into a weapon. And if names were written down, then those names, if they ever surface, could set off a chain reaction that the palace may not survive. That's why the historian's timing feels so urgent now. He isn't only releasing a letter, he's stepping into a minefield where truth, loyalty, and institutional survival collide. And once you understand that, the reveal stops feeling like an academic discovery and starts feeling like a warning in motion. And once the reason for the reveal is understood, attention turns to the letter itself, the words Philip wrote, with the cold clarity of a man who feared what was coming. This letter isn't written like a grandfather worrying, it's written like a commander issuing a warning. The historian claims Philip's words are blunt, disciplined, and stripped of sentiment, more like a briefing than a farewell. And the most chilling detail? Philip doesn't talk about Harry's phase or rebellion. He talks about trajectory, outcome, consequence, as if he believed Harry's future could become a national problem, not just a family one. The historian describes Philip's language as the kind that doesn't comfort, only clarifies. Duty, risk, long-term consequences. Words that don't ask permission to be harsh because they're written for survival, not feelings. Catherine might write with empathy. Charles might write with hope. Philip, according to the historian, wrote like a man who had watched the monarchy survive wars, scandals, and public collapses, and learned that the most dangerous crises are the ones families refuse to treat as strategic until it's too late. Philip's focus, the historian says, isn't on Harry's mood. It's on Harry's pattern. Not he's angry right now, but this is what he becomes when pressure meets attention. Philip allegedly frames Harry's personality as unstable under attention, or something close to that. Not a cruel insult, but a warning about how certain temperaments behave when the world is watching and the person feels misunderstood. Philip's perspective is cold and almost clinical. Attention doesn't just reveal who you are, it amplifies who you become. And Harry, in Philip's view, was vulnerable to that amplification in a way the family was underestimating. The letter, as described, suggests Charles must choose institution over emotion, and that line alone is a dagger because it implies Philip believed Charles would hesitate. Charles is a father. Charles is also a king. Philip is essentially warning him that fatherhood will tempt him to soften boundaries, to delay consequences, to prioritize healing. But the institution, Philip implies, cannot be protected through softness. The institution survives through discipline, and discipline often feels cruel in the moment, especially when it's aimed at your own child. That's where the emotional contrast becomes unbearable. Love for Harry versus protecting the crown. Philip's alleged words don't deny love. They challenge what love should look like in a monarchy. They imply that loving Harry might require confronting him early, holding boundaries even if it fractures the family privately. Because the alternative is a fracture that happens publicly, and public fractures don't just hurt feelings. They damage legitimacy. They weaken authority. They invite exploitation. Then Philip's warning shifts from internal behavior to external pressure, and the historian says this is where the letter becomes quietly terrifying. Philip references outside influences around Harry, not just friends, not just the media. Influences plural people and incentives that could turn personal pain into strategy. Philip's perspective, as described, is that Harry's vulnerability wasn't only emotional, it was structural. If Harry felt wronged, if Harry felt unheard, if Harry felt pushed out, the wrong circle could turn that feeling into a weapon. The historian claims Philip wasn't merely worried about conflict, he was worried about narrative, about story, about the modern power of personal testimony when it collides with institutional silence. Philip, who came from a world of discipline and privacy, allegedly understood something that still haunts the monarchy today. In the age of public storytelling, whoever speaks first often wins even if what they speak is selective, emotional, or strategically framed. A monarchy survives by not explaining itself. But a person who feels wronged can survive, and even thrive by explaining everything. And that leads to the cliffhanger line the historian says sits like a bomb inside the letter. Philip predicted Harry would weaponize narrative. Not gossip. Not petty complaining. Weaponize. That word implies intent. It implies method. It implies turning private family life into public leverage. It implies using sympathy as pressure and personal pain as authority. The historian claims Philip's warning reads as if he saw it coming. The moment Harry realized the world would believe his emotions more than it believed the monarchy's silence, he would learn he could move the public with his story, and once that happens, the monarchy becomes vulnerable in a way it cannot fight without looking cruel. The letter, as described, doesn't paint Harry as evil. It paints him as dangerous in a specific way, emotionally powerful, publicly sympathetic, structurally positioned to cause institutional harm if guided by resentment and the wrong influences. That's why Philip's tone is so disciplined. That's why it reads like a briefing. Because the threat isn't a tantrum, the threat is a trajectory. And as the historian keeps describing these lines, the story becomes less about family conflict and more about a chilling possibility. That Philip saw the future as a scenario with steps, incentives, and outcomes. A scenario Charles could prevent if he acted early. But Philip didn't just warn in general terms, he pointed to a specific future scenario that terrified him. According to the historian, Philip described a scenario so specific it sounds like prophecy. Harry, pushed by resentment and fueled by outside influence, would one day turn private family life into public ammunition. Not by accident, by strategy. Philip's warning wasn't about a single fight, it was about a method. A future where Harry's pain becomes a weapon and the monarchy becomes the target. The historian says Philip's words don't dance around the idea. They point straight at a pattern Philip feared would become inevitable if no one intervened early. Private conversations becoming public content. Family disputes transformed into commercial storytelling. Personal grief repackaged into a narrative that people could consume, share, defend, and monetize. Philip, as described, wasn't imagining a messy argument. He was imagining an organized campaign built out of emotion. And that's where the warning becomes terrifying, because Philip allegedly warns about recording, documentation, or controlled storytelling. Not necessarily in the literal sense alone, but in the strategic sense, capturing moments, preserving lines, collecting fragments of private truth so they can be arranged later into a public case. In Philip's view, once Harry learned that the public would reward his pain with attention and sympathy, the temptation would become stronger than any family loyalty. Not because Harry is heartless, Philip implies, but because pain can be seductive when it finally feels heard. And the monarchy, built on silence, can't compete with someone who speaks emotionally first. The scenario includes a trigger moment tied to succession or public image, and the historian says, this is what makes the letter feel almost eerie. Philip didn't just warn, be careful. He warned that timing would matter, one moment where resentment meets opportunity, where private grievance meets public appetite. A ceremony, a milestone, a shift in the line of succession, a moment when public attention is already focused on the family, and the smallest spark can become a fire. Philip's logic, as described, is simple and brutal. If Harry wants leverage, he will act when the monarchy is most vulnerable to narrative pressure. That's why Philip urges Charles to set boundaries early, despite emotional cost. The letter doesn't paint boundaries as cruelty. It paints them as prevention. Philip allegedly suggests that waiting for calm is a trap, because calm never arrives once resentment begins to harden. Charles, Philip seems to assume, will hesitate. Charles will try to heal. Charles will delay confrontation because he wants to believe family love can outrun public conflict. Philip's warning reads like an argument against that hope is not a strategy. Boundaries are. The foreshadowing in the historian's account cuts deep. Philip suggests Harry would seek sympathy as leverage. Not simply sympathy as comfort, but sympathy as power, because in a modern media world, sympathy can pressure institutions into response, apology, concession, even retreat. The monarchy's greatest weakness is that it doesn't defend itself emotionally. It defends itself with restraint. And restraint, Philip seems to understand, can look like guilt to a public that wants feelings, not protocol. Then comes the cliffhanger implication that changes the scale of the warning. The letter suggests risk to the next generation, not just Charles. Not merely embarrassment, but something that could shape William's reign, the children's future, the monarchy's stability when transition inevitably comes. Philip frames betrayal as inevitable if ignored, not because he believes Harry is doomed, but because he believes the conditions around Harry could become powerful enough to steer him. That's what makes the scenario feel like prophecy. It isn't mystical. It's structural. And as shocking as that scenario sounds, Philip's next warning is even darker because it names the people who could help it happen. The historian claims Philip didn't blame Harry alone. He blamed influence people and pressures that could steer Harry's anger into something more dangerous than rebellion. Philip allegedly warned Charles that if Harry's circle gained enough control over his story, they could turn the monarchy into a permanent villain for profit and power. And that's when the letter stops feeling personal and starts feeling like national security. Because Philip references outside counsel or a circle around Harry, and the historian says the letter treats that circle like a risk multiplier. In Philip's view, resentment doesn't become strategy in isolation, it becomes strategy when it's shaped, encouraged, and rewarded. Philip warns of incentives, money, attention, ideological revenge. The kind of incentives that don't care about family bonds because they profit from rupture. If the monarchy becomes a permanent villain, it creates a narrative engine that can run for years. Every new event becomes proof. Every silence becomes evidence. Every royal tradition becomes material. Philip's letter, as described, exposes the monarchy's weakness with chilling clarity, privacy dependence and public sympathy dynamics. The monarchy relies on silence to survive. But silence is exactly what gives storytellers room to define the truth first. Philip seems to understand that once a public audience chooses an emotional hero, the institution will always look like the cold antagonist. And if Harry's circle understands that too, then the monarchy becomes vulnerable not to facts, but to perception. The foreshadowing grows darker when the historian claims the letter hints at media partnerships or coordinated narratives, an organized way to release stories, shape interviews, control timing, maximize impact. And then the cliffhanger detail drops. Philip may have named one person explicitly, one name in ink that would instantly turn rumor into danger, turning outside influence from theory into target. That's why the letter isn't just about family in Philip's mind. It's about containment, protection, the survival of the institution when personal pain becomes public weaponry. But if Philip truly warned Charles this clearly, the next question becomes unavoidable. What did Charles do with the warning? If the letter exists, it puts Charles in an impossible position. Either he ignored Philip's warning and allowed the crisis to grow, or he followed it quietly, setting boundaries the public never understood. The historian claims the palace's actions over the years suddenly look different when viewed through Philip's letter. And that's the terrifying part. It suggests this wasn't chaos. It was containment, because once you look back through that lens, the monarchy's past choices start to resemble strategy instead of reaction. Reinterpreting decisions as preemptive boundary setting becomes unavoidable. The small protocol shifts, the tightened access, the sudden emphasis on privacy, the polite distance that seemed like cold family drama to outsiders now looks like an institution quietly bracing for impact. If Philip warned Charles in ink, then Charles's most controversial moments stop being emotional mistakes and start looking like deliberate containment actions designed to slow a future Philip feared. And the emotional cost of that is brutal. Charles balancing fatherhood and monarchy survival isn't a public image problem, it's a private fracture that would poison any man. Imagine being told by your father, in the coldest language imaginable, that your own son could become a threat to the crown. Imagine knowing the right move for the institution might feel like betrayal as a parent. That's the trap Philip's letter creates for Charles. Every choice becomes guilt. If he protects Harry, he risks the crown. If he protects the crown, he risks losing his son forever. Insiders suggest Charles kept the letter secret to avoid public panic. And that secrecy makes sense in the way royal logic always does. If the public hears the monarchy was warned, it stops being a family story and becomes a national question. What did they know? And when did they know it? Secrecy becomes the only way to prevent the country from seeing internal fear as weakness. But secrecy also creates another danger. It isolates the truth inside a few hands, turning family conflict into an intelligence file instead of a relationship crisis. That's why the palace could never speak about it publicly. Because once it's public, it's unstoppable. Then comes the foreshadowing the historian points to, evidence of protocol changes tied to Harry's access. Not screamed, not announced, but implemented. Quiet rules that tightened like a noose. Who could meet him? Where? Under what conditions? What was allowed? What was recorded? What was prevented? To the public, it looked like spite. In this new frame, it looks like risk management, an institution trying to protect itself without admitting it's afraid. And then the cliffhanger hits. The historian claims Charles showed the letter to one other royal. Just one. Not a committee. Not a crowd. One person trusted enough to carry it, without leaking it. That detail is horrifying, because it suggests the letter became a private weapon inside the family, passed hand to hand like a warning that could change how everyone sees Harry. And if one other royal saw it, the next question becomes inevitable. Was it William? Because William's possible role as enforcer of Philip's warning suddenly looks plausible. William's boundaries, his distance, his insistence on protocol, those choices, could be read not as resentment, but as obedience to a warning he could never admit existed. If William believed Philip predicted the scenario, then every time William refused reconciliation on public terms, he may have been doing what he thought was necessary, not what he wanted. And that changes the emotional center of the story, from brother conflict to institutional duty ripping a family apart. And now, with the historian's revelations spreading, the fallout doesn't stop at Charles, it hits William, the future, and the monarchy's fragile unity. The moment Philip's alleged warning becomes public, William's role shifts instantly. He's no longer just the future king, he's the man standing between the monarchy and the scenario Philip predicted. Every boundary William has ever set now looks either justified or cruel, depending on who's watching. And if the letter is real, it gives William something powerful, legitimacy. But it also gives him something dangerous, responsibility for what happens next. Public reinterprets William's past distance from Harry in real time. Supporters claim William was protecting the crown. Critics call it cold strategy. And the split becomes vicious, because its emotional people don't debate it like policy. They debate it like betrayal. William becomes a symbol of restraint to one side and a symbol of cruelty to the other. Meanwhile, palace advisors tighten control to prevent further leaks. Because once one letter becomes public, the palace fears what comes next. More documents, more whispers, more sources, more proof that this family conflict was managed like a security threat. The stakes escalate fast. Family fractures become constitutional narratives. People begin asking questions the monarchy hates. Can it survive modern exposure? Can it endure a public war built on private pain? And then the foreshadowing strikes again. A new leaked excerpt appears, sharpening the story, implying the historian's reveal is only the first crack in something much larger. And the cliffhanger lands heavier. The historian hints there's more than one letter. Not a single warning, but a chain. A series. Proof that Philip didn't write a moment of fear, he wrote a plan for containment that could outlive him. But the biggest twist isn't the letter itself, it's what the historian reveals about Philip's final instruction. According to the historian, Philip ended the letter with a line so cold, so final, it sounds like a royal command meant to outlive him. A direct instruction to Charles about Harry that leaves no room for sentiment. The historian says that sentence wasn't advice, it was a boundary. And now, the monarchy faces a terrifying choice. Honour Philip's warning and risk public outrage, or ignore it and risk the future Philip feared most, because the final instruction, as described, doesn't feel like opinion. It feels like doctrine. Duty framed as survival, not preference. The kind of language you use when you believe the institution is at stake, and tenderness is a luxury the crown can't afford. Philip, according to the historian, didn't write, "Be careful." He wrote something closer to, "Do this or pay the price." And whether people agree with it or not, that tone carries a brutal truth. When monarchies fall, they don't fall because of one scandal. They fall because they hesitate when boundaries are needed. Charles, in this version of events, is portrayed as torn in a way that would hollow out any man. Emotion versus institutional obligation. Fatherhood versus monarchy. Imagine reading a letter from your own father that essentially tells you your son could become the crisis that defines your reign. Imagine being told your compassion might be the weakness that gives resentment room to grow. Charles, the historian suggests, didn't just face a warning, he faced a choice that could destroy him either way. Protect Harry and risk the crown. Protect the crown and risk losing Harry forever. That's not leadership. That's tragedy wrapped in protocol. And that's why William's role becomes central, because this isn't a warning that can remain theoretical. If Philip's instruction exists, someone has to enforce it. Someone has to be the wall. Charles can be torn. William cannot. William represents continuity, and continuity demands firmness. The historian's claim reshapes William overnight. It positions him not merely as the future king, but as the designated enforcer of the boundary Philip believed was necessary. That is a heavy kind of legitimacy, one that makes every no look justified, and every moment of distance look like duty, rather than cruelty. But the story doesn't end with William, because inside any palace, boundaries become weapons when different factions use them for their own protection. Camilla's circle, as implied in the broader narrative, may push for harsh enforcement to protect stability, because stability protects their influence, their access, their standing. If the monarchy is threatened by narrative warfare, then the people closest to the king will always prefer the solution that locks the doors tighter, not the one that opens them. And that's where the moral fog thickens, The same boundary that might protect the crown can also become an excuse for coldness, for control, for pushing family members into permanent exile under the banner of duty. The foreshadowing turns darker when the historian implies a second sealed letter exists. Not just one warning, but a layered message, something Philip prepared as if he knew the first letter could be buried, dismissed, or misinterpreted. A second letter suggests escalation. It suggests Philip didn't trust a single instruction to survive palace politics. It suggests he created redundancy, 2 locks, 2 keys, 2 moments of truth timed for different crises. And if that's true, the monarchy is no longer dealing with a rumour, it's dealing with an archive of intention. Then comes the cliffhanger that makes the entire situation feel like a ticking clock. A hidden archive reference suggests the letter could be retrieved publicly. Not whispered about, not vaguely described. Retrieved, produced, verified in a way that would force the palace into a public confrontation it cannot spin away. Because once the public sees Philip's words in full, once they see the coldness, the finality, the instruction, it will ignite outrage on one side and vindication on the other. It will split the public into camps the monarchy cannot reconcile, and it will trap Charles in the worst possible light, either the king who ignored his father's warning or the king who followed it and broke his family for the sake of survival. The final emotional beat is what makes this truly ominous. Truth emerges, but the family war deepens. Because even if Philip's warning is proven, it doesn't heal anything. It hardens positions. It turns private pain into historical record. It gives William duty-shaped justification, and gives Harry a fresh wound shaped like they always suspected me. It transforms the conflict from present tense into destiny, from family fracture into institutional story. And stories like that don't fade, they echo. So the monarchy stands at a crossroads that feels almost cruel in its simplicity. Honor the warning and look heartless, or ignore it and look reckless. And Philip's final instruction, hanging in the air like a blade, makes the dilemma unavoidable. Because if warnings become reality, then the true test isn't what was written, it's what the crown chooses to do when it no longer has the comfort of denial. Because in the end, this isn't just about what Philip warned, it's about what the monarchy does when warnings become reality. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.